Hey guys, welcome to Bite Me. I am not sure what's going on with this whole sepia tone in the video, but it is doing wonders for my skin tone. Get a little bit of jaundice in you there. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of a yellow complexion every now and then. Depends on who you ask. This is season 2, episode 5. Today we're going to discuss pluralistic ignorance. And everybody collectively went, huh? It's not something that you have probably heard very frequently, but it is something you probably experience every day. If Dunning-Kruger effect, and you can see more for that in last season's episode, if that's the popular bully jock's go-to, then pluralistic ignorance is his praising pick-me sidekicks go-to. If Trump is the one experiencing Dunning-Kruger, then all of his cronies are the pluralistic ignorance. You follow me? There's the lion and then there's the sheep. So simply put, pluralistic ignorance occurs, and this is in layman's terms, you can Google it, when an individual member or when individual members of a group, such as a school, a team, a workplace, a group of friends, believe that others in the group hold comparatively more or less extreme attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors. See reed.edu for reference. Let's dissect what that means. So, just give you an example of this. It's like you have the movie Grease, right? And there was John Travolta, and they were all in this like biker gang or whatever. And John Travolta did not feel comfortable disclosing to the rest of the group members that he was in love with Sandy, that he was actually interested in the same things that she was. He was afraid of being ousted. Do you see where I'm going with this? They had the same thing in High School Musical where the jock, didn't want to explain to his friends that he was interested in musical theater because he didn't believe any of them had other interests outside of the football team. So it's where you're afraid to disclose a contradicting belief to what you believe everybody else believes. It's kind of sick, really, because you can never really know what's going on in someone else's brain, but the thinking is so individualized that some of these people really believe. It's so compartmentalized that some of these people really believe, if I believe they believe this, all of them must believe it. And you may have some examples of that in your own life that you can think of as I recite this. And right now you're like, oh yeah, there's a name for that. Well, it is. It's pluralistic ignorance. So in 2016, no one actually thought in their brains, no intelligent person in their brain thought, oh, I think Donald Trump will make a great president. A very few people actually thought that was a fantastic idea. A bunch of people just assumed, a bunch of Republicans and conservatives just assumed that everyone else believed that, and as such, people didn't try to step in the way of it. And I remember one time hearing an interview, or watching a documentary, rather, with Chelsea Handler, and she infamously noted that she had a distant relative who was a Nazi. It was her grandfather or maybe her great-uncle, I believe, I forget. But she and the interviewer went to a Holocaust museum, where she inquired with the museum docent, why wouldn't it stand up to Hitler? How could my family have been a part of this? What made him think this was okay? And the museum docent replied, well, it's very simple, really. If you're standing in a field full of men who are ready to go to war because they have to feed their families, do you want to be the one guy who stands up and raises his hand to object? No. Some of them were doing it because they had to. They felt they had to go along with that. I'm not taking up for the Germans or the Nazis. I'm just saying you do have to stop and come out of some of this black and white box thinking and think about the critical circumstances in between. People are afraid of being ostracized by other people, such as human nature. So from there, we talk about the bystander effect. And if no one acts upon the injustice that's unfolding before people's very eyes, the perception of the viewer or viewers becomes conditioned to believe that what is going on before them is completely normal. Some people may compare pluralistic ignorance to cognitive dissonance, but the difference here is the social aspect, where you get people involved and groups of people. Cognitive dissonance is when you want to save the environment, but you still use plastic bags. Your actions and beliefs don't align, but only in your realm, in your world. It only affects you. Pluralistic ignorance is when you still hold your own beliefs and practice them, but not necessarily in a social setting. Pluralistic ignorance is induced by a social construct. Unsurprisingly, it holds higher frequency in groups of men, but here's the kicker: groups of women are more harsh about it. Like, they are harsher. Like, if you were a group of, I don't know, boomer ranching white women, and you found out one of them liked Hillary, like, that whole group of women would ostracize you. Whereas the group of men, there may be that shock more frequently, but they're not as quick and harsh to completely out the member. Like, there may be some negotiable conditions. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I want to say good for women for sticking to their guns, but also like, no, you stupid bitches. Oh my gosh, let's take a break on Bite Me. And welcome back to Bite Me, talking about pluralistic ignorance today on season 2, episode 5. I think how I'm explaining it is about as clear as mud, but I hope it's coming across in a way that translates. Again, I would encourage you to think of some instances in your life that you can compare it to, and I bet that will help put the boxes together. Pluralistic ignorance, whether you're familiar with the term or not, you don't really have to study it thoroughly to understand the harmful effects it will and has no doubt caused society. Donald Trump. The 2016 election is a really good example of pluralistic ignorance. QAnon, that's a good example of pluralistic ignorance. People who are anti-vaxxers, pluralistic ignorance in typically conservative communities. These are people who have not been taught to critical think or to think outside of the box and have independent thoughts of their own. So, to sit back idly and watch could be considered a survival technique, as we discussed with Chelsea Handler's uncle or grandpa. However, it also makes us complicit. Maybe there are not circumstances so extreme as if you're standing in a field full of Nazis and it's World War II and the Holocaust is going on and things like that. But maybe it is that extreme. I mean, if we have whole elections being swayed with these people who think this way, this pluralistic ignorance, and then they consult Facebook, which is specifically geared to their interests and whatever they're clicking on, I mean, that is to sway an election. Perhaps the circumstances are that extreme. It's a Jewish proverb, I believe, if not now, when, if not me, who. That's not just Emma Watson. It is Jewish paraphrasing. If you never knew that, because Emma Watson said it, it wasn't hers. You see how that works? It's like pluralistic ignorance. It's like women believe that other women believe that Emma Watson said that, and then they're not doing like the critical work to like figure out where that phrasing come from, and here it's a Jewish phrasing. I don't know, that's a very minimal example. I don't really want to rope a good feminist into this. I'm just using that for reference. But essentially, anytime that you look at Dunning-Kruger effect, pluralistic ignorance, cognitive dissonance, these are all things that we have to look for inside of ourselves, and it's impossible to constantly be monitoring yourself to make sure, oh, am I using this plastic bag? Am I making sure there wasn't an injustice? Like, it does get exhausting, but it's important to take the baby steps to unlearn what we've been taught, which is just to go along with everything. That is what the powers that be want. Change is hard, and the world is harsh, and social media has undeniably catered to these unhealthy dynamics, and we're all out here just trying to make it. But if you see something, you really should say something. Unless you like having your mouth sewn together like they have some of the women's in A Handmaid's Tale. Okay, so for better understanding of pluralistic ignorance, you can check out the Audiopedia on YouTube and just type in pluralistic ignorance. And for the traditional history of if not now when, Google Hillel the Elder. That is the Jewish reference for the phrasing. As always, feel free to check out the Truthful Groomer website. I invite your inquiries. I invite your messaging on TikTok. Check me out on Insta, Twitter. Love to hear from you guys. And I'm your host, Brooke. We'll see you next time on Bite Me.